All right, guys. Since we're working on solving systems, we probably ought to take a look at a couple where you've got a combination of a quadratic, okay, and a linear function. Okay, so if you take a look here, this guy's already, the quadratic's already in the form we want it, y equals. But notice that this guy is in standard form. So I want to change the form of it so it says y equals, putting it in slope-intercept form. Okay, so move the 2x over, so 2x becomes negative when it moves to the other side. So we have 3y equals negative 2x plus 9. And then divide through by 3. Okay, so I get y equals negative 2/3 x, okay, plus 3. And so now I have y equals and y equals. Okay, so the easiest way to solve this would be by substitution. So if this is equal to y and this is equal to y, these two things have to be equal to each other. So set them equal to each other. Okay, so we get x squared minus x minus 42 equals negative 2/3 x plus 3. Okay, and obviously we're going to get a quadratic. Now, the last thing in a row I want is a fraction in there. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that fraction. So if I multiply everything by 3, it'll make the fraction go away. So I get 3x squared minus 3x minus, let me see, 3 times 42. 3 times 42, 126 equals, that would be a negative 2x, okay, plus 9. Okay, so we're in good shape there. Now let's just put it in standard form. So let's see, we get 3x squared. Move the negative 2x over so it becomes positive, so I'd get negative 3x plus 2x, so that's minus x. And then let's see, negative 126 minus 9, okay, would give me a negative 135 equals 0. Okay, now I'm looking at that guy, and I'm thinking, it might factor, it might not, so I'm going to look at b squared minus 4ac and see whether or not it factors. So b is negative 1, so I get negative 1 squared minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is negative 135. So I'm going to get 1 plus, let me see, 12 times 135, 1620, right? And so I want to make sure I got that. 4 times 3 times 135. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to get 1621. And I don't think that's a perfect square. Okay, let me see. Second square root, 1621. No, that's not a perfect square. Okay, so it doesn't factor. Okay, so we go to the quadratic formula. Okay, let's see what we got going on here. Okay, so x is the opposite of b, so the opposite of negative 1, plus or minus square root of, well, I already did b squared minus 4ac, that's 1621, all over 2 times a, which would be 6. Okay, so I get 1 plus or minus the square root of 1621 all over 6. All right, now we're running into a problem here because you say, okay, well, let's give exact answers. And okay, x would be 1 plus radical 1621 over 6, and x would be 1 minus radical 1621 over 6. And then notice I would have to go up here, okay, and substitute it in to find y. And obviously you could do that, but it's going to be really, really time consuming. Okay, so I would say this is a perfect example of where if you stay exact, you're going to spend an inordinate amount of time, okay, to come up with those exact y coordinates. So I'd say it's not worth it. Okay, so let's see what happens here. Okay, so let's see. All right, if I go 1 plus second square root 1621, hit enter, and then divide by 6. And then we'll round off to nearest hundredth, so it's approximately 6.88. And then I'll do the minus, so if we go 1 minus second square root 1621, hit enter, and then divide by 6. I get negative 6.55. Okay, so those are the x-coordinates of my two solutions. Now I want to make sure, okay, that things work out here. Okay, so I'm going to take 6.88, and then I'm going to take negative 6.55 right there, and I'm going to try them in both of these things and make sure that, remember, these are approximations, so these are approximations as well. Okay, so let's see, let's check this first one. Okay, so if I go y equals 6.88 squared, okay, minus 6.88 minus 42, what do I get approximately for my y? Okay, so let's see, 6.88 squared minus 6.88 minus 42. I'm getting roughly, rounded off the nearest hundred, roughly negative 1.55. Now, I want to see if this will work in the second one. Okay, so I've got to try it. Okay, so let's see, 2 times 6.88 plus 3 times negative 1.55, is that roughly 9? Okay, it's not going to be exact, but is it close? Okay, so 2 times 6.88 plus 3 times negative 1.55. And notice I get 9.11, and that's about as close as it's going to get with all the rounding we've done. Okay, so I'll stick with that guy. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing with negative 6.55. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to say, okay, y equals negative 6.55 squared minus a negative 6.55 minus 42. And obviously it's going to be rounded off, so let's see what happens. Don't forget the parentheses here. Negative 6.55 squared, this would be plus 6.55 minus 42. I'm getting roughly 7.45. And so I'm going to check this in the second equation and see whether or not it works out. Okay, so I have 2 times negative 6.55 plus 3 times 7.45. Is that roughly 9? Okay, so let's see what happens. 2 times negative 6.55 plus 3 times 7.45. I'm getting roughly 9.25. It's not perfect, but considering all the rounding off we've done, that's probably about as close as I'm going to get it. So here we go. I don't like to round things off, but in this situation, certainly I would understand why we are using approximations rather than going with an exact answer. Okay? All right, let's try one more of those guys. Let's see, this guy right here. All right, so let's see. Notice it's y equals. So they took care of that for us. So if both of these guys on the right-hand side are equal to y, then they have to be equal to each other. Okay, so we have x squared plus 2x minus 35 equals a negative 1/4 x minus 6. And again, I don't want that fraction in there, so I'm going to multiply everything by 4 to get rid of it. So I get a 4x squared plus 8x minus, I'm pretty sure that's 140. Okay, I'll check that just to make sure. 4 times 35, yep, we're good, equals a negative 1x minus 24. And then we put it in standard form. Okay, so I've got a 4x squared. Notice when the negative x comes over, it becomes positive, so that'll be plus 9x. And then when the negative 24 comes over, it ends up being positive. Okay, so I'm going to get a negative 140 plus 24, and I'm getting negative 116. Okay, again, my guess is it probably doesn't factor, but I'll check b squared minus 4ac just to be sure. Okay, so let's see. I would have 9 squared minus 4 times 4 times negative 116. So that's 81, okay, plus, let's see, 16 times 116. That's 1856, and then add that to the 81, I'm getting 1937. Now 1937 certainly doesn't strike me as being a perfect square, but I'm going to check it. 1937, that is not a perfect square. Okay, so this does not factor. Okay, so let's see. X equals the opposite of b, so negative 9, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. We've already done, that's 1937. All over 2 times a, so 2 times 4 is 8. All right, so we're in the same boat as we were with the last one, where, yes, could we go back and use each of these individually and punch them in to find an exact y coordinate? Yes, we could. Would it be very time consuming? Absolutely. Okay, is it worth it? In this case, I'd say no. Okay, so let's just punch these in, round off the nearest hundredth, and we're good to go. So let's see, negative 9 plus second square root, 1937. No, how about 1937? Hit enter, and then I'm dividing by 8. Hit enter. So I'm getting roughly 4.38. And then I'll do the minus. So we'll go negative 9 minus second square root, 1937, hit enter, and then divide by 8. So I'm getting roughly negative 6.63. Okay. All right, so let's see my solutions. Okay, it looks like I have one solution where I get 4.38. And then another solution where I get negative 6.63. And obviously I want to check those. So let's check the 4.38. So let's put this in here. So we get y equals 4.38 squared plus 2 times 4.38 minus 35. And let's see what we get. And obviously it's going to be rounded off here. Okay, so let's see. 4.38 squared plus 2 times 4.38 minus 35. I'm getting roughly negative 7.06. Negative 7.06. Now I have to check this in the second one and see whether or not it comes close. So I got negative 7.06 is roughly negative 1/4 times 4.38 minus 6. And let's see how close we come. Okay. Let's see, okay. So I have a negative 1/4 times 4.38 minus 6. And I'm getting roughly about negative 7.10 when it's rounded off. So, yeah, it's relatively close. Okay, and don't forget we're using approximations, which makes things worse. Okay, let's do the second thing here. So I'm going to put it in here. So y equals negative 6.63 squared plus 2 times negative 6.63 minus 35. And obviously I'm going to have to round things off. Don't forget the parentheses here when you square it. So negative 6.63 squared, okay, plus 2 times negative 6.63, okay, minus 35. I'm getting roughly about negative 4.30, okay, negative 4.30. Now I want to check, do these work in this guy? Okay, so I have a negative 4.30 equals negative 1/4 times negative 6.63 minus 6, and see what happens. 0. I know that's going to be an approximation. Here we go. 1/4 times 6.63 minus 6. Okay, and I'm getting roughly negative 4.34. So close enough. Okay, so I should feel pretty good about that one too. Okay,